Chelsea Cooper, founder and CEO of Approvely. We are a stablecoin payments platform. We are purpose-built for niche markets, largely online gaming. I didn't understand distribution. I didn't understand how to get more customers. It was a very good lesson and an expensive one for a 25-year-old. And well, because I had time on my hands, I said, okay, I'll do it. So I did. If I don't have a co-founder, if I don't have a CTO, it's not going to be a barrier for me to win. It was flawed logic. The idea was a good idea, but the problem was the distribution channel. We launched that at the beginning of the year. We signed 90 customers in 90 days. We did not expect that. You should be learning to generate revenue before you're learning how to put a deck together.
Welcome back to Funds and Founders. We have Chelsea on today. And random fact, today I realized I've been spelling your name wrong and saying SEA everywhere. And then I was looking through your history on LinkedIn. And I was like, I know it's SIE, and Justin's also told me a couple of times, but just random. I have this bit where I ask every guest to introduce themselves, tell people what they're working on, and just plug whatever you want to plug. Retention is like 30, 40 seconds nowadays, so I got to plug you in the beginning. So even if they drop off, they at least know where to find you. So tell the audience who you are, what you're working on, and where to find you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Chelsea Cooper, founder and CEO of Approvely. And we are a stablecoin payments platform. We are purpose-built for niche markets, largely online gaming. And you can find me on LinkedIn. It's the easiest one, I think.
Yeah, and we'll link everything for you. But why don't you tell us, where did your entrepreneurial journey start? What would you say was that one defining moment where you're like, I know this is what I want to do and this is what I like doing?
So I had the benefit of being raised in a home where my dad was an entrepreneur. So I always say that, obviously that comes with a different kind of set of upbringing, but I saw a parent build, and I felt like that, for me, just changed the mystery about it. A lot of times I'd see him doing things, and I'd be like, I can do that better than him. So I feel like getting that exposure early on was a pretty big reason why, at my core, I'm a builder, I'm a problem solver. So my dad was one of the VPs of Fiserv in the early 80s, and single dad raising 3 girls. And I really grew up around the dinner table, talking about this stuff. He was very obsessed with the work environment, what was going on. He later started his own company, and I helped him right out of college. So I grew up around the business, really. So that's my experience, early days. And in terms of how did we get to where we are, it's kind of a long journey, but I would say that every pivotal moment was always about a growth opportunity for me. So reflecting on is there an opportunity for me to push myself a bit more? So out of college, I started helping him in the business. And then I realized there was more opportunity for me to grow. So I went and got a partner and had a couple offices, and we were scaling a company. And then from there, I started Approvely. So it's been kind of like a journey between a few different experiences that led me to where I am now, and definitely challenges along the way at every stage. But I don't know that I would have ever done a different way. I just felt like there was so much to do, so much to build, and being a problem solver was always what drove me to create, So if I would see a problem early on, I would challenge that. And then I would say, well, why does it have to be that way? Is there another way to do it? And so very, very early on, I was known because I started in the business learning the credit and risk side. I was the one that got all the most complicated use cases, and I would solve for them. And so then that's all I spent my time doing, was really complicated projects. And it just really kind of built it from there.
Did you ever have a traditional 9-to-5 corporate job, or was it always in the business, either working with your family or starting your own?
Yeah, I've never, outside of jobs that I had in college or in high school, little retail jobs, I've never worked for corporate America.
The first venture you started, what was the company, and what was the first week or the first day? What did that look like for you?
So of my own company, the first one was also a payments company, but it was very much a lifestyle business. So it was really challenging because I went from working in my dad's company to having this idea that I could create a product within the payments ecosystem. And so I took, and I was 25 at the time. I took some money, and at the time felt like a lot. And I had an idea. I was going to build a product to basically streamline the onboarding process, which is actually kind of funny because we're still dealing with the same problem. But anyways, so
Onboarding process to become a merchant and process payments, or
correct. Yeah. So I went out on my own just to kind of build my own business and see if I could do it myself. And I remember there was weeks, there was days in the beginning, early on, and actually for a while, where I had too much time on my hands. And it was driving me crazy. I was like, what am I going to do with all this time? Is this the right decision? And the non-action of that was never an option for me. So just putting the ball in the hoop, making little efforts, chipping away at things in the beginning was the only way that I could get through. But there was times where it was really challenging because especially when you're solo, you don't have the benefit of being in a huge team where you have all this inspiration that you can draw from. So I found myself diving into resources like other podcasts.
Yeah.
I loved listening to How I Built This.
Guy Raz.
And yeah, so, if I could get inspiration from there, okay, these founders did this. They were struggling. They thought they'd go in one direction. They went in another direction. So, but when you're by yourself early on and you don't have a ton of resources, it's kind of lonely,
So taking a quick step back, right? So you want to fix the onboarding process. Why did that problem even feel like something you need to solve? Talk through that sort of thinking or logic of, I see this, I'm going to go try to build a business to fix this. Why this? Why that problem? How did you validate? If you validated, what was that thought process?
Yeah, it was flawed logic. The idea was a good idea, but the problem was the distribution channel. So if you build a product without a distribution channel, then you're solving a problem for no one and you have no customers to test for. So that was my flawed logic at 25. Was oh, well, if I build this product, then I could get more customers. But actually, that's wrong. It was a very good lesson and an expensive one for a 25-year-old. Probably could have bought a car with that.
Yeah.
So that was the idea. But it was, I have this problem in my own experience with building a very, very small payments company, which was I have data entry. I have a lot of data entry. I was trying to increase my own throughput. I was well, if I'm doing, 5 deals a month and I'm working with 5 customers a month, if I solve this one problem, I can go from 5 to 10 and from 10 to 20. It was a good idea. But I didn't understand distribution. I didn't understand how to get more customers. I didn't understand anything about that world because I had never been in a digital sort of environment or distribution channels. So the way that my experience was with my dad's company was very old school. You would meet a customer, you would deal with the customer directly, very direct sales in that way.
Like traditional business versus online business.
Yeah, traditional or just no distribution channel.
Yeah.
So no point of distribution where a customer needs your service. So there was no scale in that company. So that was the biggest problem, is that company didn't have the potential for anything other than just being a lifestyle business because it wasn't solving a greater problem.
How many months in did you have this realization?
It was probably, I would say, a year. Yeah, it was probably a year. And, product's interesting because as a founder, you can get a lot of distractions from non-revenue producing activities. So that was also a good lesson for me early on, which is oh, I can chase down this rabbit hole. And exactly what I explained is early days, you're kind of with stagnant time.
Yeah.
So you're trying to find things to fill your time. But, now I understand it has to be the revenue driving activities, So it has to be the things that either the customer needs, you understand that there's a business case there. Early on, I was well, maybe if I solve this problem, I can spend a lot of time with these tech guys and I can build this cool product. Okay, well, what if we launch it and we don't have any customers onboarding? You can't scale that.
So when you had this realization that distribution is very important in building a business, what did you do? Did you pivot? Did you build a new product? Did you go find distribution? Or what was your approach to having that realization?
So that is when I realized I wanted to grow more. So basically I realized I was kind of boxed into a corner with the resources that I had and the experience that I have. Still 25, very new in the business. And so I started going to a lot of conferences and building my network out. And I was like, well, it's not going to be me that's just here doing this myself. Like, I need to build resources and I need to build contacts. So I went to one of the relationships I had at one of the banks and I said, this is where I am. I'm young in the journey. I believe like there's a lot of drive here on my side. I want to create, I want to build. I want you to give me a contact at the biggest company you have in your book. And I'd like it to be a woman, I said, because, you know, obviously there was this companionship. Like, there's not a lot of women in the space. Like, if you can find me anyone, let's go for someone that's got a good reputation. But they took the ask and they brought me right up to someone that had built a really big company. And I started like that, and it was kind of awkward in the beginning because she didn't know who I was. And I was like, hey, I'm 25, I'm starting this company, and like, can I get like 30 minutes or an hour of your time every month? And I went structured. I was like, I came with the questions, I came with the problems, and she helped me. So I started like that. And then I was going to conferences, and I was meeting people in the industry that were building things different, doing things different, asking a lot of questions. And then I was inspired by another founder in our industry that had learned from another really big company how to scale a brand. And that's really where I learned the distribution. So then I really just kept that lifestyle business kind of like running. And at the same time, I started working with another founder who was looking for a partner at the time. And he needed someone to basically help him with other sectors of the business. We were going to grow an office in Miami. He was in LA. And we had started with, you know, a handful of employees, and we scaled it up, right, through he had knowledge of the business on the distribution side. And that was the pivot. I didn't realize that was happening at the time, because initially it was like, well, you're building your brand, you'll be in Miami, and you'll handle like this sector of the business. But it sort of morphed, and then we started just growing together.
Taking a quick step back, you mentioned you wanted to go build your network, find people in the industry, learn from them. Where did you get that maturity? Because I feel like a lot of younger founders don't really like the idea of having a mentor, having an advisor. Like, it's sort of something you understand as you go deeper into your career. Where and how did you have that insight that, oh, I need to... I feel like mentorship, advisorship is a cheat code that a lot of people really don't utilize super early on, because there's that notion of like, I'm going to do it, I'm going to figure it out. Like, you know, it's there. I don't need to go ask this person who's been doing it for 20 years for help. But where did you get that from? Was it just family help? Was it just something you had a realization of, the why go get a mentor so early on?
Maybe out of desperation. I don't know. I mean, I think just I didn't have an ego about it for sure. I mean, I felt like, look, these people have done this before. There's parts of the business that I'm really excited about. And I don't know that there was like any one thing other than, why wouldn't this person be willing to help? And I was prepared for a no also. If I went in and I had the ask and they said, no, like, I don't have time for you, I would have probably just called the bank back the next day and be like, she wasn't a good one. Can you give me 4 more?
Yeah.
So I think probably the tenacity about, there's got to be a team, there's got to be someone that's helping me. But knowing that the journey was not going to happen alone, I think was the initial drive. And early days, you don't have any capital. So what other options do you have aside from like watching YouTube videos or calling up other founders? So I felt like it was a good, easy win to get some knowledge. And I felt like this person was kind of like at the end of their career in a way. Like, if it was me, I'd love to mentor someone in the industry that's just coming in. So. And
the other question I had was, you mentioned that there's not a lot of women in this industry. Maybe I'm assuming here, but my understanding is payments, banks, processing in general is a very traditional, older industry, not like run online, very traditional business mentality, relationship based. Did you ever feel like that was a hurdle for you that took a lot longer to build out and sort of get over, because there's closed circles, you got to sort of find a way in to build the relationships to then maybe get the business? Or am I misinterpreting how this industry runs?
First of all, I was raised by a man, so I've never really had the fear around making relationships with men. It's, I think, a little bit instinctual for me. I actually think early on I would have said it was an advantage, because a lot of times I would enter a room and I was the only one in the room that's female. And, people would basically, maybe they would discount me because I was a female, but then I would start speaking about the business or would tell them about my approach to a solution. And the comments I would get was like, how long have you been in this industry? Where did you learn this from? And so I started to realize early on that I had an edge because I had this ingrained knowledge from growing up with it from my dad. And so actually, initially, I didn't think being a female in the space was a disadvantage. Today, I have a different perspective. Not that it's a disadvantage, but I also realize that there is, there are groups of people that operate to help each other out. If you're in this investor network, if you got VC money, if you have people on your cap table that have invested in companies, the reality is that's a sandbox that exists.
100%.
And if you're not playing in it, you're outside the box. And so now we see that, which is because we're not a venture-backed company. So no, being a female in the space I don't think is a problem or, a disadvantage at all. But there are networks of people that operate to help each other, for sure.
Makes sense. And then before we get into sort of the journey of Approvely, you're sort of building this business out, you've pivoted, you've found a potential partner to work with. Are there any lessons or learnings from that experience in that business that you took away from and sort of have learned, implemented, or just kept in your pocketbook of like, here's what not to do, or here's how not to do something?
Yeah, so I would say the biggest thing for me learning is that it really matters who you work with in business. So in that business, I had a business partner, and I wasn't like completely aligned with some business decisions, ethical practices, and so I would say like that was a huge lesson. Absolutely. There's also, you have to have alignment on financial. So financial is really, really a personal decision, and it carries into business. The way someone treats their personal finances is how it'll impact their business decisions as well. And so when you have a business partner, if you're not like completely aligned on those pieces, it can be problematic. So yeah, I mean, those are lessons for sure from the negative side, which is what you asked me first. The other thing I would say is like, what was a good thing that I learned is I was really, really excited about building a team and realizing that what you can do with business impacts like other people's lives, their livelihood, and it's a really exciting thing. So when I finally started to get a team, I was really, really driven by the team. Like I would have put the name of the company like across my forehead. I loved the team. I loved building for the team. I loved watching the team learn, empowering them, seeing them lead their own groups. I got really excited about that. And then scale. So learning about distribution channels, learning about how to scale a company and the infrastructure that you need. Those are huge takeaways in that journey for sure.
I'll double click on distribution a little later. I think nowadays when someone comes to me saying I want to build an app, build a product, have a website, my question to them is, do you have distribution, or what's your plan to get distribution? Because I feel like nowadays with all this AI, no code, low code, folks are over indexing on building the best software and the best solution because it's become easier and cheaper to do that. But at the core of it, if you keep avoiding do I have a good problem I'm solving, and do I have a group of people who have this problem who I can potentially sell to, I feel like people tend to skip over that because it's not a skill set that's super easy to learn, grasp, or understand. Just distribution in general, marketing channels, understanding how to create that top of funnel. But do you have a couple of insights on just what you learned about getting distribution, building distribution, or making distribution for a product you have that folks can take away?
Yeah, so I've always thought about building companies from the distribution channel and from the problem, and building the products around the distribution channel that you are serving, not the other way around. So not build the product and then try to figure out who to solve for. Actually build a very scrappy product that might actually solve the problem and then iterate, because there's going to be so many times where these customers come back to you and they're like, no, that's not what I wanted. I wanted this other thing. So if you can find a problem and put a product in front of them in a very simple way and test, and it could be like a very, very scrappy way to do it, I feel like that's the best option. We went to really complicated areas, especially with Approvely. Like, we went to areas which were regulated, had reputational risks associated with them. We kept just trying to find a solution for those industries. And distribution channel, we early days got a lot of partnerships. So I think that's an easy way for young startups to get going with clients, is through partner relationships.
Nice. And let's move on to the next part of your journey, right? So you built this venture. I want to say roughly 2020 is when you said you were starting Approvely. What was that turning point of what insight did you find, or what problem did you find? What audience did you find where you're like, I want to go start this and solve this problem for them?
2020, we launched Approvely, which was COVID. And still so much.
And it's just you at this point, right? So it's just you, no one else?
Right, just me. I was continuing, since I had a network in the space, I had a lot of contacts. I was still getting calls from partners and people in the ecosystem. And so basically I realized that, so the business that I was doing before wasn't very vertically focused. The first business that I was in was very vertically focused, but the last one was not. And so I started getting a lot of requests for daily fantasy sports customers, and they were basically underserved by the market at large. So they would have, either a startup or a company processing under $5 million in revenue, and they were not able to achieve getting card payments. And so early on, we were getting a lot of those kinds of requests, and I just...
Did Approvely start out as a payments processing company, or was it something before it became this?
Just a payments processing company. Yep.
And so you're getting a lot of requests from these gaming providers. How do you act on that? What kind of feedback were you getting, and how did you decide to act on that feedback?
Yeah, and we didn't know early on that we would be dealing with gaming customers, truthfully. We were pretty much just well, let's see. I did spend a little bit of time between leaving the last company and saying okay, do I really want to do this? But we were having the conversations with the merchants or the operators, and we were asking the questions well, what's the problem? Why are you not getting support? And a lot of them were just, they would start their company, they would build the brand or they would build the app, and they would go to get payments in. It could be 6 to 12 months, or they would never get approved. So yeah, we just kept asking them questions about their current experience. And then we had some relationships with some banks, and I went to them and I said, look, we spent a sizable amount of time, let's say 2 to 3 months, understanding this client base. We think we can do a better job. We've put some technology around some of the fraud and risk problems. Do you think that we can start to create a gaming division of your company, and we can actually start to support and manage those type of customers, because there's a lot of volume there? And they gave us a shot, but they didn't know anything about gaming. So they were like, you're going to have to build the credit policy. You're going to have to build all the risk metrics that we need. And well, because I had time on my hands, I said, okay, I'll do it. So I did. So I started putting together the framework for the bank of what we would need to do, and we worked back and forth with them. And then we went live. We had onboarded 2 customers, and then Visa came out with a new rule change, which required additional collateralization for the bank. And the bank said, we don't want to do it. So I spent 6 to 12 months building out this program, finding the industry that would work in, putting the tech layer together that we would need. And within a 3-week period, it was pretty much gone.
Yeah.
But what happened in that time is that the 2 customers we onboarded were champions for our brand. So they said they started spreading the word around. Approvely's really good. They helped me. They got me set up on time. And then I feel like we had a few points of luck. I got asked to do a session, a panel session live with Visa and FanDuel, which everyone knows. And so it was me and Visa and FanDuel up on the stage. And I think the room just assumed that we were the payments company that like stood them up. But we weren't. We were just there talking about the industry from the payments landscape. So those kind of like small things, I think, led us to where we are now, essentially.
Nice. Couple quick tangents. You said customers were asking for payment support. How many people did you talk to before you said, okay, gaming, and specifically like high-risk gaming, is something you want to try to build for? Just to get an idea of like, when did you think that was a positive signal? Was it just one person, two person? Were there enough inputs for you to be that? Or did you just take a shot based on a couple conversations?
So we talked to operators directly. I would say probably like 10 to 15 of them.
Yeah.
But then we also started getting and making relationships with the other parts of the ecosystem, because I felt like we couldn't just make relationships with the operators. We also had to make relationships with the lawyers in the space and then some of the technology providers to get a true assessment. Like, this is their experience, but then you also have the lawyers, and in this industry, the gaming lawyers really know a lot about what's going on, and Visa. So we had a relationship with Visa too. So it was them, but it was other people that also helped us to come to this decision.
Nice. And was it just your, I don't know if naiveness is the right word, but you said these folks were taking 6 to 12 months to get approved and maybe get live, if at all. Was it just you saying, hey, I think this doesn't need to be 12 months, that you're like, okay, let me go figure this out, build relationships? Or were there other insights as well that made you feel like there's something to innovate or disrupt here?
Well, I mean, first of all, a lot of the technology that they were using was definitely very old. That was apparent. And their experience in general. So, yes, I mean, payments in general and fintech is a pretty big opportunity for innovation. The systems are legacy. It's pretty well known. I mean, those things are there. But specifically for gaming, the other insight was around the disputes. So they have a lot of fraud and dispute problems. So we felt like there was an opportunity that wasn't being solved for. Also on the compliance side, which was a challenge for them too, and especially the smaller operators that don't understand like what they're getting into. So yeah, I think early on, I don't think we understood like totally the landscape, because gaming is very complex. Like, the first thing is to understand like what types of games these people are building, what the legal frameworks are, what the game styles are. So there's like a lot to learn, but actually that didn't overwhelm me. Like, I just kept asking, like, what does this mean? What does this mean? And again, to the mentorship part, like, I didn't have an ego about the fact that we were new in the space, because every time I would get involved with it, people would say she's really helping these people out and she wants to learn. Like, give her everything you know. So there was a couple gaming consultants early on that were working with some of the bigger operators like Prize Picks and FanDuel and Underdog. Like, they were like, look, she's championing this for our industry. Help her. Like, tell her where the gaps are, tell her what the problems are. And I think that was a great opportunity too, to start to understand, because in an industry with like that many layers, you have the regulatory side, there's just a ton to learn.
Yeah.
And that was exciting to me. It didn't like overwhelm me in a way. I was like, give me more. Tell me what else we can do,
Can you roughly walk through the timeline of 2020, you started Approvely, roughly how long till you started getting this insight, and how long till you had MVP V1 out, and when did the first dollar come in? Doesn't have to be just like rough buckets of how long these things took.
So, we started making revenue like right away. So because our business, like, we could start customers and we were onboarding customers, we could use out-of-the-box software. Like, we could use a gateway and connect it to our banks, and like, we didn't have to build a ton, right?
And that was just processing in general for anyone in general. It
Correct.
Wasn't gaming specific.
Not gaming specific, yeah. So, I mean, from 2020 launch, I would say probably like 4 to 5 months, and we were starting to see like some revenue. Like it was probably, $20, but we were starting to see that customers were signing up and we were earning from the accounts that we were putting online.
And how long till you had sort of this holistic ecosystem figured out? Because you started as payments, then you started doing high risk gaming. Now you need legal, you need compliance, you need all these tertiary frameworks to be built. And I'm assuming it's still you at this point. Have you started growing your team, or how many folks were at Approvely at that time?
Honestly, that's like a good way to describe like how it happened, and actually a really good way that founders can think about it. We never started with like all of it figured out. We started with like the most basic scrappy thing. And then the customers are like, okay, well, you're doing this really well. Can you do this? And then that's how we got the product validation. And that's how we started to understand like what to build. To now, to where we are, like 2025, like what we have, how long did that take? I mean, every day we were getting insights, and every, month we were adding things. So it was a journey. I mean, we launched the new product that we have now, which is wholly different than what we're talking about now, in the beginning of the year, this year, 2025.
So,
but it's made a lot of iterations and like kind of pivots along the way, like using someone else's framework, and then we've taken that out. Now we have our own stuff.
And so I think one of the insights that I'm trying to get at is, how do you balance sort of signal to noise ratio of you're hearing all this input, right? So customers are users and customers are always going to ask for the world. How do you figure out what is important for you to build and focus on and sort of understand versus what is something that can be shrugged off as just, hey, this is a very specific edge case? Because I think a lot of founders tend to go down this rabbit hole of, hey, my biggest customer wants something from me, let me go figure it out for them. But they lose sight of hey, my vision is for these 90%, and what I'm doing for this person is just going to make things harder. But how do you sort of balance that and understand or decide what is something that truly needs to be built and innovated versus what is something that's a one-off edge case that is not going to move the needle and doesn't need your time or energy?
I think my answer to that is going to be different based on the stage, because my framework of reference from like a capital perspective or just my understanding of an industry might have been different. But like early on, I was mostly thinking about like, what did I have access to? Like what could I build with limited resources, and not letting myself get ahead of myself, right? Like I can't overthink it, and I can't ask leading questions either that are giving me the answer I want.
Like, because that's like subconscious bias, right? Of like, you're looking for the answers you want to hear, and if you get them, you're affirming a bias that you already have or assumption you already have.
And also, like, if a customer is willing to use the product in its current state, then maybe it doesn't need to be built. Like, maybe you need to be focusing on something else. So I've always kind of been a big believer in let commoditized products exist and let them be commodities, like, and build the things that are highly vertical specific. So, for example, the concept of building an onboarding tool. Well, if onboarding exists, like if there's an out-of-the-box framework at that time that I could get from my bank, then I don't need to spend time doing it. But when my customers were coming to me saying, hey, I want payments and I want specifically fraud and risk, and I need help with the integration side, then maybe those are things that would bring value, which we didn't have to sink a lot of resources into. I've also thought of it from that perspective. Like when I'm building, I'm looking at like what exists today that the customers could care less about if I build it myself. That's how we made those like early days decisions, because we weren't trying to, shoot for the moon at that point. Now my answer would be kind of different, because I think about like a longer term strategy, or potentially like a bit ahead of where the industry is.
Have you always thought long-term 2, 3, 4, 5-year vision, or has it always been in the moment, what's going to move the needle? How do I get this done over the next 3 months? Like, how has your thinking evolved for whatever time frame you want to use when you started Approvely, maybe before? Because I feel like that's also a journey that a lot of founders undermine or maybe don't give enough importance to, is how to think, plan, and be strategic, but also not get bogged down in the process at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, as of recently, only because I have a team now, do I even have like a chance to think like that far ahead. But I mean, I would say I'm more focused on as close to the customer as we can get. You have to be forward thinking for sure, but things in the market can change so fast.
Right.
Like even this week, because we're at a gaming conference in Vegas, there's a lot of new changes with predictions market. So, for example, there's companies out there that have been building for one way, and now that we have predictions markets, they have to think about, does that matter? Because now there's a whole new industry that exists here. So you kind of have to balance the two in a way. I mean, once you're committed to something, you're committed to it, but we've always tried to say, like, what can we do today? What are the customers' feedback? And then, yes, of course, now we think about product and what do we want to build, because we already know this is something the customers need or want, or it can solve a problem. So I think you kind of have to take both paths in a way.
And the reason I ask is I feel like there's a lot of like content and like guides and workshops online on how to do this planning and how to build that and how to have a roadmap for your product and stuff. And I feel like that's over engineering a process too soon. There is a time for that. There's probably a stage in every company's growth cycle where you need that and you figure that out. But I feel like early on, you got to really focus on what does the customer want? What's going to get me money? What's going to move the needle? Because at the end of the day, if your business is not profitable, or it's not a good business, or it's not investable, like what are you really, like why are you building it, right?
Yeah.
And sort of understanding that.
I mean, I would say that that's honestly like how we got to the point of the stablecoin platform. So we took like a really scrappy approach with that. And we were ahead of it. But like we also they didn't like dream it up to what it is today. Like we had a client that had like a stable coin or a crypto wallet. And we took the crypto wallet, we took it in its current form, and we just continued to build upon it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I would say like that's kind of how product can happen too, is just starting with something very basic and then adding features based on what the feedback is.
Are you quick to kill features and kill product if you don't see traction? Or what's your take with sort of approaching that iterative process of like what's working, what's not working? Because I feel like, especially early on, if you're building your first company, first product, I feel like it's really easy to get tied to like, oh, I need this to work. And then you go down this rabbit hole of like, how do I make this work? How do I make this work? Whereas you need to kill it and figure out the next version of that because it's just not working.
Oh, yeah. For me, no. I'm like, kill it. If they don't want it, if they don't need it, like it's out. And I think that comes with maturity, like as a founder, because early on you might have like taken everything you have into this like concept and this idea, and it could be like a solo ride. So just kind of that whole concept of like you live in a bubble, you think your idea is the right one, and you're not willing to like, or you can't see another way. So you just try to like will it into existence. But now I would say I'm all about like, if it doesn't matter, if it's not going to drive revenue, then we don't need to be talking about it.
I wanted to take a quick pivot. I know you haven't raised VC money at this point. You're 5 years into the journey. Talk through sort of that thinking of, did you never go the route? Did you go maybe try to raise or didn't work out or terms weren't working? Or like, what was the thinking and why have you continued to right now build without any VC or investment?
I mean, I had the benefit, and not everyone will, is that I had another company that sold. So we took investment from our side, and we built the business like that. And the thinking behind it was market validation and putting us and my team in the best situation from a control perspective. So not because we need to control, but because we believed so strongly that like our value prop was so unique in the sense that there really isn't another like privately owned company in the space that's able to truly create solutions. So I didn't want our hand to be forced in one way or another if we didn't feel like it was the right move for the company. So we never took in like standard sort of VC funds in that way for that reason. And the concept was that if we can achieve revenue, if we can get profitable, then if we were to go to raise funds, we're in the best man situation.
Makes sense.
And that was the idea behind it.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like getting VC money would help you grow, or do you feel like the marginal impact of that wouldn't make a difference to sort of your journey or your trajectory?
Now, yes. I mean, so now we're thinking about like much bigger budgets. It's about, do we take it in parallel path? Do we do the one project at a time? I'm also a strong believer in like being able to execute if we take in money like that. So even if we were to get a massive cash infusion, I'm also thinking about being able to execute at the same level that we are today.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it would help for sure in some of the projects that we have. And it's something that we're currently debating about.
Makes sense. And do you feel like that control that you have because you don't have VC money has allowed you to move faster, iterate faster, or sort of pivot strategies and clients to be more fluid versus, and again, I'm speaking from a point of like reference. I've never raised money, so this is just my learnings from other folks. But after raising money, there's a lot of like VC pressure, board pressure that ends up pushing founders in a certain direction. And sometimes they feel it's hard to go down the path that they want to go down because there's all this either fiduciary pressure or like board pressure or the VC's guiding you and pushing you to do something. And it's sometimes easier to like not fight that battle and just sort of go ahead and do it. Do you feel like that's given you an edge compared to other folks in this space? Or how do you look at that difference between you being still privately owned versus competitors or sister companies who have raised a decent amount of VC money?
For sure. So I think early on, if you have a lot of distractions with non-revenue producing activities, that's a problem. So if you're spending a lot of time early on, like strategizing and decking out and figuring out who to present to, when you could just be selling customers or selling partners, that's definitely a miss. You should be learning to generate revenue before you're like learning how to put a deck together.
100%.
That's my perspective, very, very directly.
Yeah.
So I would say that for sure. But sometimes like it's a distraction. You don't want to do the things that are hard. So you can get caught up in like, I got to raise money.
Yeah.
But do you really? So I would challenge that thinking for sure. And then just to the point of, specifically for Approvely's journey, I know that it's helped us. I know it's helped us because we're not distracted by M&A. There are competitors in our space that were very big competitors to us about 1.5 to 2 years ago that we do not see anymore.
Yeah.
And we know that is because they've been acquired by their payments companies and they can't figure it out. Their teams are like, what's going on here? So that's a massive win for us. And thing two is that some of the biggest growing markets in the U.S. right now are gray markets. And so daily fantasy sports, for example, falls under that category because in not every state they're regulated. But if you operate in a regulated business, so let's say you're doing a sports book, an online sports book, there's a complete competing interest there because you have regulators and then you have unregulated business. We don't have that challenge. We have it's open market for us. So we can make decisions, we can take decisions based on the business that we want to do. So that's been a massive help from that perspective, is that we don't have a decision tree in that way.
Makes sense. And then one thing I wanted to cover roughly is you Approvely, like you don't have a technical co-founder working with you. And I just want to highlight that it's possible to build a really big business without sort of having everything solidified. So can you roughly talk through how you ended up building a tech platform, a payments processing solution, serving the industry, processing 9 figures a year, and understanding that you did all of this with support and tech support, but there's no technical co-founder? Because I feel like what I just want to highlight for potential founders or people starting out is you don't need to have everything figured out. And I think you touched upon this as well, starting out. You don't need to be a CEO plus a CTO. You spend 6 months trying to find a CTO. I'd rather spend 6 months building product, trying to generate revenue, and then figure out, okay, do I still need a CTO and how do I solve that problem? But what are your thoughts on this? How did you handle that journey and figure that out over the last 5 years?
So my thinking behind that is always that I've had to focus on what I have and not what I don't have. And I'm pretty tenacious in that way, in the sense that like I was going to make it happen, right? So if I don't have a co-founder, if I don't have a CTO, it's not going to be a barrier for me to win. So the thing that I had to do was to find really good partners that support the technical side of the business. The other thing that I came to understand was that oftentimes you have a co-founder relationship, but what ends up happening is like one person has to become the decision maker.
100%.
So it worked out for me in a way because basically there was no question about who was the CEO of the company. There was that. But in terms of building products, I had to get comfortable with the technical teams that I was working with through partnerships. And I was big on assessing the quality really early on, which is hard to do when you're not technical. But again, like I had relationships, I had consultants oftentimes that were helping us, and it worked out. I mean, we have a stablecoin infrastructure, and that we put together on our side. So it's been through partnership.
What about the understanding of what is being done, what is being built? Is it you trusting those partners to make sure the tech is solid, or are there checks and balances you have on your side as well just to make sure that what you're delivering the customer is never subpar? Because I feel like payments is a space where you can't really go wrong, and once you are processing, you like your ducks have to be in a row. You can't like just drop payments or send them the wrong place or whatever.
Right. It's both. I mean, you definitely have to trust, but it has to be with, the framework that needs to be in place and the expectations very early on.
Before we go into quick rapid fire stuff, what's the next year look like for you? What's top of mind for building out Approvely? What's the next phase look like? And what's the big hurdle you want to get to over the next year?
We have a lot. So our team is growing a lot. We are continuing to build out and scale out the team, continuing to add more features to the platform. Like, we are not slowing down. We actually spent a lot of this year because when we started, we were a smaller team, and then we started growing a lot. So we launched the new stablecoin platform, Rapid. We launched that at the beginning of the year. We signed 90 customers in 90 days. We did not expect that. We were thinking we were going to launch this week, actually. So we launched it almost, 8 months ahead of schedule, 9 months ahead of schedule. So that actually comes with a challenge. It's like, okay, are you actually built for the scale of that? So you spend a little bit of this year, a lot of it, kind of building infrastructure on the team and the platforms to scale. So for us, 2026, we feel is our year of growth.
Nice. Is there anything with growth that you're worried about more than others? So are you worried about the team size growing? Are you worried about processing volume, getting more customers, expanding to other markets? What's top of mind with growth for you?
To be able to maintain the quality that we have and training the team at scale. That's a completely different animal. And I think with every phase, it's like, it's exciting because you're learning to manage something new. But it's totally different when you have just a team of 3 and now, you have a team of 20. It's totally different from the management side of it. So that's the only thing for us, is making sure we can maintain the quality that we want for our customers' experience.
Makes sense. I'll quickly go into just some quick questions that we'll try to cut up into shorts and make you go viral and get Approvely more customers. But I'll just go quick rapid fire. You don't have to think too much about the answers. What's the biggest myth about high risk payments or high risk clients that folks misunderstand?
That they're low quality business people.
How do you start your day? What does the first 30 minutes of the day look like for you?
On a Peloton bike.
One daily habit that sets you apart from other female CEOs in the gaming industry.
I would say exercise.
Okay. What's the craziest regulatory story that you've lived through?
Oh man, these are hard. I think actually we are living it right now. It's what's going on with predictions markets.
You mean like the growth and the explosion of that space, or?
Yeah, and the fact that now you have traditional daily fantasy sports companies becoming predictions markets and that blend there. Like, what are they going to do with that?
Makes sense.
It's totally different.
What's the next big sector or the big bet that you're going to take with Approvely?
In terms of what?
No,
There's
so
so
like,
many.
as in you're doing high risk gaming.
Oh.
Are there other like parallel industries? Like, which industry are you going to take a big bet on?
So our big push is really to become more of a regulatory tech provider, which is like about giving access to the banks and the infrastructure we've already created across the ecosystem.
Describe your entrepreneurial journey in one word.
Tenacity.
That's exactly what I was thinking, as you'd say. If you were just starting out again, what advice would you give your younger self? Something to do different or something to do better?
Trust the process.
What's the biggest risk that you've taken that's paid off for you?
Diving into Approvely like right away. I didn't think I was going to start actually another business after the company that I left, getting involved as soon as we did.
How important is focus for you as an entrepreneur?
So I'm pretty focused, but I also feel like you have to give yourself moments of flex time, because I can run and I can run fast, but I can't run fast forever. So I'm more of a believer in like you're sprinting for a certain period of time and then you're giving yourself a break.
Makes sense. I know you had 2 kids after starting Approvely. How do you balance sort of CEO time versus being a mom time?
It's insanely hard, actually. So I had my first in 21 and my second in 22. So it is very much compartmentalized. Like when I'm with my kids, I'm with my kids. And when I'm on. So I try to time block in that way.
If your kids were going to start a company, what advice would you give them?
To focus on the problem. And if you can build and create solutions, then yeah, you have something.
Well, I think that's all I had for you. I appreciate you coming on. I know we're going to get a flight out right now, but why don't you tell the camera who you are once again, what's Approvely working on, who should reach out, where they should reach out, and we'll link and plug everything for you and make Approvely big.
Amazing. Well, thanks for the first live episode being recorded like this on a podcast. I'm Chelsea Cooper, founder and CEO of Approvely, and we have a stablecoin payments infrastructure for the largely niche markets, but the gaming industry. You can find me on LinkedIn. Chelsea Cooper is spelled Chelsie, as we talked about before.
And we'll link everything from you, but I appreciate the time, and hopefully we can do an episode 2 when you've crossed 10 figures in processing, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.